So just to thank you all again for joining this morning. This, as I said, is our fourth webinar in our series of webinars about protein crops, which we covered under the VALPRO Path project, Horizon Europe funded project, looking at developing new landscapes for plant protein pathways. Just in terms of the project VALPRO Path, just give you a very brief overview because I don't want to take time from our speakers today. VALPRO Path was really built on the premise that there was no premium supply chains available for plant protein crops in Europe. So current systems, really what they did is they focused on feedstock for livestock production for monogastric and ruminants to counter the import of soybean meal into Europe. But then on the back of, I suppose, heightened societal awareness and the willingness of consumers to pay for more carbon neutral and products that are more traceable and of local provenance. All of these things added up to the development of the potential for a food sector or food element for plant protein crops in Europe. So based on all of this, what VALPRO Path decided to do was establish itself in September of 2022. It runs for 4 years and it's about a 9.5 to 10 million euro funding. And we brought together a number of partners, 23 in total, across 5 different countries in Europe. The coordinator is Teagasc in the Republic of Ireland, but a lot of those partners are both commercial and research partners. So the idea would be to look at the plant protein sector in Europe and how those partners can influence its development. So just in terms of what we needed to do within the project, we looked at 5 principal crops. We looked at lupin, chickpea, faba bean, pea, field pea, and peanut, which this webinar is about today. And the reason we looked at these crops is that we know that they're high in protein content, above 15%, or some of them substantially more. They fix nitrogen, so they're very beneficial to the environment. They're suited to European climates, and they can offer a high premium potential for food applications. So the main focus really then, once we knew of these crops, was to look at suitable varieties of these crops that could grow in specific regions across Europe. And once we knew the right varieties, then we developed the right applications for those so that they could be applied to the right marketplace. The final 3 things we did is we looked at, once we harvested these crops or the specific varieties of these crops, we tested them for their nutritional value. And the aim of that then was to develop high value applications, food ingredients with these plant protein crops. Ultimately, then the idea was to bring all of these food ingredients into a business modeling approach where we could develop sustainable business models from the field the whole way through to an end product application for plant protein crops in Europe. So without further ado, I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to pass the floor over to our first speaker, who is one of our main partners focusing on development of specific varieties of peanuts that can be grown in Portugal and the Netherlands. We're very happy to have Mark O'Brien. He's the business development manager for Beotanics here in Ireland. Our next speaker then, Timo, will speak about his work that he's been doing, very novel work being done in the Netherlands to try and bring peanut production to the Netherlands, not just the processing element of it, which is very strong. And then our final speaker, Mohsen Kamani, is going to speak about how we apply the scientific element, the technical innovations to try and develop more value from the peanut crop that we can grow in Europe. So, Mark, I'm just going to pass the floor over to you when you get a chance. Thanks.
Sure thing. Okay, thank you, Richard. I trust you can see my screen there. Everything is okay?
Yes, you can see.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So I'm with Beotanics. Thanks for the introduction. I'm here to talk about Beotanics' role within VALPRO and creating European peanut value chains. So just a quick intro on Beotanics and what we do. We work on developing new crop opportunities. We kind of bring together plant genetics, clean planting material, grower networks, processing routes, market development. We have experience and success in kind of building systems with other crops like sweet potatoes. And for peanuts and for this project, the focus was, as Richard said there, on connecting the right varieties with the right farmers for local processing, for value-added markets, and then kind of building a system that enhances that commercial viability for farmers and for the industry. Why peanuts? Why Europe? So Europe imports heavily. The farmers are interested but kind of systems are kind of missing to prevent scale. We kind of see an opportunity to move beyond raw crop production into kind of farmer and processor value at farm gate and at processing level. So retaining more value closer to the farm. So overall within Europe, so that graph on the left, it's 681,000 tons of peanuts imported, but that's only the shelled and unshelled peanuts. Doesn't include peanut butter, peanut oil, other kind of already processed crop products that are being imported. So when you include everything together, the overall tonnage kind of goes well up over 1 million tons imported annually. Main importers are the Netherlands, Germany, Poland, but throughout Europe, there's importing and there's processing at a kind of small level throughout. Sorry, skip the slide there. Yeah. So the logic kind of behind the project. So we started with variety selection first off, and it's kind of where you always have to start. Variety selection, then field trials, then connecting with growers, value-added processing options, and eventually kind of we want to move into a wider scaled up system. The key point is that the kind of commercial success depends on connecting suitable elite seed to farmers and to value chains, and not treating each kind of stage in isolation. You have to select your varieties and understand the varieties for the end use and the end target. So moving on to kind of that variety selection process, we began by sourcing like elite varieties from an established breeding company in America, and they're very, very good partners with us. So and been very helpful to us throughout this project. So then through trials, we narrowed that selection down based on kind of regional suitability, nutrition profile, processing potential, kind of pest and disease resistance, and kind of moves from like initially about 40 varieties in year one and kind of screening them down in the different regions down to about 5 candidate lines, with 2 candidate lines in particular showing kind of exceptional suitability. And within each region, we're looking at multiple factors, but also multiple kind of strains of peanut or varieties. So we have some black peanuts, we have the traditional peanuts, we have some stripy peanuts for different markets, different processing uses, different kind of end targets, supply chain kind of goals. So farmer interests obviously will grow when the agronomic and commercial potential is clear. If the EU wants to increase farmer adoption of peanuts, we kind of need to showcase the practical crop evidence, the clear route to market, and kind of support around agronomy and crop risk. So peer learning obviously is very important. Grower to grower confidence, kind of move this kind of onto the next level and onto wider adoption of peanut growth throughout Europe. And that the aim as well is to build kind of a cross-region network that can support knowledge transfer and future scaling, and connect farmers in different regions and even locally, creating farmer groups. So to move beyond just the raw crop production into kind of farmer and processor value, and retaining more of that value closer to the farm, the value chain becomes kind of stronger when the production, the processing, the end use kind of all designed together. So on farm or local processing routes, such as deshelling, roasting, peanut butter, snacking, oil, they're all ways to create value at the farm level, and they're fantastic. Some examples shown here is just a farming partner of ours, Joao, in Portugal. He's a very innovative guy. He's lots of ideas and lots of trying new products, and his products are great. And it's a great example of what can be done at the farm gate to add value to peanuts. So there's peanut butter, obviously roasted in-shell peanuts, it coats peanuts. It's a fantastic way a fantastic example to other farmers of what can be done at the farm level to add value. And then at a later stage, and at a more industrial level, the shells and skins can also be considered. Circular use, obviously, overall will increase the commercial viability. So what is Europe missing at the moment? So throughout the VALPRO project, we gathered results from farmers, from industry. There was interviews and kind of questionnaires, and the main issues raised were the on-farm capability, local processing infrastructure, industry support. That kind of includes advisory knowledge, crop protection, protein crop categorization, startup funding, even. So we kind of view it more as a whole value chain development challenge rather than just an agronomy challenge. Like peanuts are an excellent crop and they've got excellent value or added value potential at the farm level. But aside from that, there's also, it is a low water nitrogen fixing crop and it has a very high sustainability score for farmers, for the EU, for industry as a whole. And it's one that really should be promoted. So to scale it further, kind of more coordinated systems are required. So beyond kind of these proof of concept work that we're doing at the moment, scaling peanut production will require progress across kind of four areas. So legislation, obviously that includes like crop pathway recognition, approved crop protection products, the seed system, so it's access to clean genetics, which we have. So, and then investment in storage and equipment, harvesting equipment is a big one for us this year. Agronomy support, so especially regional protocols and growing protocols, and then processor integration, clear food industry offtake routes, essentially kind of not building out a process or a supply chain that the processing industry understands and is able to access reliable European peanuts. So essentially, it's not really limited by peanut production is not limited by farmer interest really in Europe. It's kind of more limited by the absence of kind of coordinated systems. And for example, on the this year we've seen really as we've scaled kind of as farmers kind of moved into larger plots, an issue that we're having is kind of the harvesting equipment. So it's gone to a point where it's too big to be harvesting with by hand or small scale stuff. So specialized harvesting equipment is needed, and support to de-risk that equipment is key. So the scale isn't big enough yet to match like on an international level where they're using large combine harvester type equipment to harvest, but the scale is now getting to a point where it needs a smaller level type machine to help harvest, thresh, and store the crop. So main key takeaways, integrated development across the genetics, the agronomy, the processing, and the markets can support the emergence of a viable and scaled European peanut industry. And farmers do have a strong desire to engage with peanuts, when and where the agronomic and commercial potential is demonstrated and peer learning is enabled. And so, yeah, look, thank you very much. There's an example again from Joel's farm in Portugal. So, and some of the varieties, but look, thank you to the seed breeders as well, and to the farmers who have worked with us throughout the project, to Richard, Ewan, Tamara, and Dushan as well, and the VALPRO group. Beotanics is interested in continuing this. It's something we really believe in and we want to work on, and we're interested in working with partners or investors who can help build that system that we talked about and build a European peanut value chain and supply chain. Thank you.
That's great, Mark. Thanks very much for that. So just I should have mentioned from the outset that we have space for Q&A at the end of the three speakers. We won't take it individually. It's just better if we do it towards the end. But if you have any questions, you can pop them into the Q&A box down the bottom, or is there a Q&A box or the chat function down the bottom. Okay, Mark, thanks. That was a good overview of your work being done with peanut varieties, the potential that is out there, and the need for, I suppose, expanding the marketplace for peanut crops. Our next speaker is going to talk about how that's actually been put into reality in the Netherlands and how he's taken the initiative to start growing peanuts and developing a peanut business on the back of it. So, Timo, very interested to hear your story. The floor is yours.
All right. Good morning. My name is Timo Badinac. I grew up in the Netherlands in a small village in the south of the Netherlands. Most are surprised that it's even possible, and 5 years ago I wasn't sure either if it's gonna work. But today I want to show you what 5 seasons of growing peanuts taught us this far, and what already works well, and what where the real challenges still are. So let me take you through it. So first, a bit about myself. I grow peanuts and on our family farm, and next to growing them, I also build a brand around it. It's called Going Nuts. So Going Nuts is going to make peanut butter, snack peanuts that are made from peanuts grown in the Netherlands. My background is in agriculture. I studied cultivation and green technology, and agriculture business management at this moment. I'm going to finish in 6 months, so I can work on both sides, like growing the crop and also turning it into the product. So yeah, so that's the reason why I'm here today, to talk about what I've learned along the way. And so how it all started? It all started in 2021. So one morning I was making a peanut butter sandwich, and I was spreading it on my sandwich, and I thought, where is this actually coming from? So I did some research where peanuts were grown, and I found out that almost all of them come from a few places, like North America, South America, China. So that's where the majority were grown, and nobody was growing them here. And I thought maybe there's a way to shorten the chain and reduce the transport on the peanuts. So I got curious, and I simply bought some peanuts from a gardening web shop, and planted them. And late in the season, I at the end of the season, I had one peanut, just one. But that one peanut was all the proof that I needed. So it showed me that it works here, and that the plant can finish its cycle in the Dutch soils. So after that, I got a little bit more serious. In 2023, I got in contact with Beotanics for the first time, and through them, I got my first real seeds. We were early in the process for the varieties, so we had about 40 varieties back then. Not all of them worked, but they were better than the ones from the web shop. So they helped find me the right varieties and set up the proper trials, and that's how I went from a sandwich to one peanut, and now today we have 1.5 hectares. So so now the first real lesson was not every variety is the same, and the type you choose decides what you're going to make out of it. So there are 4 families. You first have the runner family, that gives a uniform kernel and an even roast, and they are the base for peanut butter and any real scale. Then you have the Spanish peanuts. They are smaller, higher in oil, and a bit stronger in taste. They are realistically the best product to do for like snacking peanuts. And then you have the Virginia. It's a larger peanut, and also could be good use for snack peanuts in shell. And at the last, we have the Valencia. It has sweet kernels, and they're a bit sweeter, and you have more peanuts in the pods. And it's also the type you use more often for peanut butter. That's a bit sweeter, especially for the natural peanut butter. So here's the part what matters. You choose the variety at sowing, and this decision is locked in months before. But the variety has to suit perfectly into what you're going to make, because it has to ripen inside a short northern season, as we have in the Netherlands. And the perfect peanut variety is useless, but if you don't finish the peanuts before the cold comes, because peanuts have to dry actually on the field to harvest them. So the products I actually want to make, we have three directions we want to go. So peanut butter would be the core product, but it needs runners. But the runners we need grinding and roasting equipment that we don't really have at this moment. We don't have the infrastructure for that. And snack peanuts is the different route. That would be the easiest to do at this stage. But yeah, you still need reliable shelling machines and grading protocols, and those are the hardest thing, missing pieces at this moment. And the peanut bars is still something that could grow the brand later, but needs the volume and consistency first. But all those three get stuck at the same point. Once the peanut is out of the ground, there's no really equipment at this point to harvest them, or yeah, we all did it by hand and sorted, and so all that is needed to make an actual finished product out of it. So before I really can talk about a process, we have to talk about the missing steps, and that starts in the field by the crop itself. So can peanuts really grow here? Short answer is yes, but I can tell you what I learned in the last 5 seasons. So first, the season length is actually the real limit, because peanuts need a long warm season, and ours is short. But the peanuts need about like 40 to 150 days of growing to mature. So early sowing is super difficult, and that's what we didn't do right the first couple of years. We're a little bit late with sowing, and then the plant just doesn't have enough time to finish. So early sowing into warm soil is everything, and you also need the varieties to finish that in time. And after harvest, you have also a short period to dry them outside, so you need the good weather for it. And second is the soil. We are lucky that we have light sandy soils that suits the crop perfectly to make the pots on the ground. And as a legume, it's perfect for the peanuts to fix their own nitrogen and leaves the soil better than it was found. And third, there's still a little bit of a problem, but I think we can figure it out with the breeders. The establishment is a little bit unreliable at this moment, but we have 70% of germination this year. It also has to do with we had a cold and wet early season after sowing. So and at this moment, I'm still using weed equipment to get rid of all the weeds we have in crops, and we borrow that from other crops we have at our family farm. So the real question is not is no longer if the peanut goes here. It does, but the question is how to grow them consistently. So two problems we haven't solved yet. The first is disease. We have seen leaf spot in the field and recurring skeletania and stem rot. These are the hardest parts, to be honest. It's we don't have any approved crop protection for the peanuts in Netherlands. Nothing. So yeah, that's super hard to make sure that the plant is growing healthy without all of these things. We try to not sow them too close, that we have enough airflow to it, but yeah, it's all we can do at this point. And the second is the yield scale. In 5 seasons, we have no proven yields per hectare, because the troughs were always small, and we had different spacing between them, and that does not really translate to what a hectare or 1.5 hectare really are. So the economics stay open until after this harvest. This year we have some concrete numbers on what it's going to cost, and if it's doable. So next one is crop protection. So the diseases we can't fix it really alone as an individual farmer. The crop protection programs has to be approved for the specific crop, and the peanut is not on any list, so we have no real legal tools. There, as I've seen, there is a legal route in the European law that is existing. Approved products can be extended to a small crop like the peanut, but only through a shared European process. And that's a little bit the obstacle. It needs recognized crop and joint effort behind it. So one farmer like me with a 1.5 hectare cannot really do that. But there is a way to begin, and you have also a trial permit that lets you test the products and that are not approved yet. So I can get approved that approval requires. So it's not really a farming problem; it's really a legal problem. And that's exactly in the gap that maybe this European project can help with. So I spent a little bit of time this year with growers in the United States, in the region where peanut grown for generations, and I've learned things that I could bring back home and whatnot. So what really transfers, what I've learned from them, is that how to really match the varieties to the product. So that's one of the largest things. What I was talking in the beginning about, to really have to match the varieties with the right to the right product. Also, how to manage diseases, how to cure and dry them, and what quality we have to aim for here. So that knowledge is super valuable to develop the peanut infrastructure here in Europe. What does not transfer from there is the scale and the cost. The American yield is around 4,500 kilos per hectare. So an imported peanuts land in Europe for about €2, and their machines are built for thousands of hectares, and also the climate is not like ours. So we have to approach it smart and think about how we can solve the problems we have right now here. Just to do it in a different way. So my conclusion is that Euro will probably not win on cost, but the honest route is a short, traceable, sold at a premium supply chain. So the consumer is aware of where his product is coming from and really knows the story behind it. And that's what I think the only way to sell them and do it at a good price. So what I'm looking for is because there are some gaps in this project that I'm trying to close. There are three things, and they're very concrete. The first, the disease strategy. Would be nice if there would be a legal way to protect the crop and help to get the peanut recognized as a real crop, so it becomes possible to use crop protections. Second is processing. The from the harvest till shelling and grinding the equipment that turns the field peanut into something actually to sell. And third is the investment. I would ask if there would be a route for young entrepreneurs to invest in machinery, or because it's the biggest step for a young farmer. So if there's any of this in your field, then just find me afterwards. So yeah, thank you. I'm happy to go deeper at any part if anyone has questions. So
It's great, Timo. Thanks very much. It kind of marries in very well with what Mark has said as well. So I know I have a few questions, but I'll wait till the end. But thanks very much for that. Very interesting to see that it can be done, even if it's only one peanut at the start. But it was still it can be done, and obviously you're at a lot more scale now. So just in the interest of time, we'll just move on to Mohsen, and then we'll come back to the three speakers and have a bit of a discussion at the end, just to flesh out what is presented. So Mohsen, if you're available to share your screen, I can pass the floor to you now. And while Mohsen is doing that, just remind participants that you can use the Q&A box down the bottom of your screen to put in any questions that you might have.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yeah, perfect. You can see it.
Great, thanks, Ashad. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mohsen Kamani. and I'm currently working as a research officer at Turkish Food Research Center. In this session, I'm going to present some preliminary work, short study conducted on the VALPRO Path project that explored the potential of peanut crops as a promising protein source, but with particular focus on variety impact. In fact, this work was done by my colleague Dr. Ricardo, who was a previous member of VALPRO Path team. As you may have seen, various type of peanuts with different seed coat colors, kernel size, and flavor are available in EU market. So there's a question: how does variety impact the nutritional composition of the peanut? So in the first part, we decided to assess the approximate composition of 21 peanut varieties grown in the EU to investigate how genetic variation may affect the nutritional properties. As you can see in the image, there was a substantial variation in the protein content among peanuts crops, not only protein content, also other compositional uh, properties were a bit different, but the focus is protein now here in this picture. The highest protein content was approximately 32%, but this is on dry basis uh, for variety number 14, while in some sample, like variety number 18, the protein content was as low as 21%. So we think that the main contributor factor to these observed protein variations is the differences in the level of oil and carbohydrate accumulations. Uh, so overall, this preliminary output suggests that the genetic factors may influence protein synthesis and nitrogen partitioning within peanut uh, kernels inside. So in the next step, three peanut varieties were selected based on the agronomic performance, yield, and also germination. Actually, selection of these three were suggested by one of our industrial project partner. So here, as you can see in the video, the peanuts, the selected peanut were subjected to mechanical oil extraction, as you can see in the video. So after that, it generates two streams, peanut oil and also this cake. So in the next step, the cake stream, which we obtain, we dry it and then mill it. And then we analyze the approximate composition of this pressed cake powder. And again, a slight compositional difference among the different cake samples were observed. Here in the left side, you can see the image of the extracted oil, and in the middle side, you can see the cake powder made from extruded solid part of these varieties. So as I said, what we have done so far is an initial work on peanut varieties. So what is missing now, which we're gonna do in the next step? So in next step, we are planning to further characterize the protein subunits plus amino acid profile, as well as we want to try to look into oil part, particularly profiling fatty acid and also the carbohydrate fractions. This actually help us to gain a bit more understanding on nutritional and functional properties of these varieties. Also, these analyses will help us to identify the most suitable peanut variety for protein extraction, and also to determine the most suitable food application for them, whether it's a snacky product or bakery or in beverage platform. Either to be used for the whole cake or its extracted protein. So thank you very much for your attention, and also thank you VALPRO team members for their support. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mohsen. Great to get an idea of how we can apply these varieties. Okay, so we're just going to open it up now for 10 minutes for a Q&A or a discussion really around some of the topics that were discussed. And just while I'm checking, we don't have any questions at the moment, so I can kick off with a few questions. But I suppose the main thing I picked up that's a kind of an overriding trend across Mark, Timo, and Mohsen's presentation was that it's a very novel crop, obviously, and at the moment in Europe, peanut in terms of its production, it's grown in very small pockets of Europe. It's like most protein crops, it serves a very specific purpose in terms of improving the soil quality, the environmental performance of a crop rotation and everything like that. But it has the same issues that, which is interesting, other protein crops have in terms of their profitability to produce them at scale and actually get value from this crop. Because we have imports of either, if it's peanut, we can get them from Argentina, South America, China, wherever else we get them. But in terms of other protein crops, we can get, our soybean meal and other replacements to our plant proteins at a cheaper price. So we have the same issue across the two things, protein, peanut, and other protein crops like bean, pea, and lupin, and so on. The only difference that I picked up was that I suppose where our protein crops in terms of agronomic development, varieties, agronomic management, that's further down the track for the likes of our beans, peas, and lupins, and lentils, and chickpea, and so on. Peanut needs a lot more work in that area, specifically because we're in a completely different climate where we need shorter growing seasons or varieties that adapt to our shorter growing season. So, in terms of either Mark or Timo, your experience, do you see the varieties coming down the track that would be potentially able to yield better in the very near future and match some of the yields, maybe not the 4.5 tons per hectare, but some of the yields that are being achieved in America, China, or America, I suppose, and South and North America?
Yeah, it depends on the region. Like Portugal, for example, there's no reason why the right equipment, the right agronomic support, it can't match any yields that they're doing in America, because it's got the long growing seasons, the heat, and the varieties that we have introduced and brought over from our partners in America are working there, and they're not failing because of the say cold or anything like that. Now, in obviously in the Netherlands, Timo had more issues, and it was probably more of a fun experiment because some varieties just failed. They couldn't hack the temperatures there. But then, very interestingly, some are doing quite well and survived. I think this year soil temps were down to was it 14 or 15 degrees around 10th of May.
It was at some point it was like 10, and
Yeah.
it was raining heavily. So we thought they're gonna die all, but two varieties did pretty well under that circumstance.
So from that point, it's very interesting information, that some of these varieties are surviving and germinating at those temperatures. But really, look, it comes back. You're not going to compete same way soya or beans from Argentina are produced at a much cheaper price than Irish or Dutch soy or faba beans are produced. Peanuts would be the same way, but the genetics are there, and like the companies that we're sourcing these genetics from, they're multi-generational breeding company that have been working in peanuts for years. They know their stuff. And so, yeah, with feedback that we can give them and say, hey, this one actually does very well in the Netherlands, and maybe that's something that we can work on in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think with the emphasis at the moment on obviously having more carbon neutral products, it's important that we have that supply chain of peanut. I know I read an interesting, I think maybe Mark, you had told me in the past about the amount of peanut that goes through the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Like the imports of peanuts generally go through the Netherlands into Europe. And I think some of maybe the largest amount of peanut that's processed in the world is processed through Holland. Would that be right? Or through the Netherlands, sorry, through that port?
Yeah,
Not
Timo will tell you more about the Dutch love of peanuts. But yeah,
We love peanut butter. You find a jar in every house. So
yeah.
that's also the reason why I started, because I was thinking why don't we do it here? And because everybody's eating it, but it's coming from Argentina, China. That's from my head, it's ridiculous that we import it from that far. But of course, the weather is better there. But if we can grow it here, yeah, why not? Just try it and try to make a product out of it, and then market it, and also give the consumer um, there was the story behind it, and I think that's actually what's going to sell it at the end, a good story, and then tell them that the chain is just shorter, that you cut out this the large transportation of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other two things that stood out to me, or two more things that stood out to me, was Mark, what you said in terms of the protein payment is not available for peanuts like other protein crops. In certain regions of Europe, there's protein payments for growing protein crops or planting just a crop. And I think that helps massively with farmers' decisions as to whether or not they'll grow the crop in the first place. But once the crop is grown at a scale, it develops a market around that as well. So it all comes hand in hand. And I think maybe if we were to put a business plan together to approach some of the European Commission in terms of supporting peanut production as a minor crop, that would be a starting point. And then around plant protection products, I mean, Timo, you mentioned that there's none available. I mean, it's impossible to grow a crop in a humid climate or with any rain whatsoever to avoid
Yeah,
some of those diseases you mentioned.
that's actually the biggest struggling point at this moment, and yeah, I hope it will change anytime soon, but try to do it without, and just keep going, and keep learning every year. So
yeah, and that's a real barrier to scale, because if you lose a half hectare of peanuts, it's okay. It's awful, but because you put a lot of time into it, but it's not going to bankrupt you. But if you have planted, 15, 20, 30 hectares of peanuts and you can't put any crop protection products on it, the when you go past that trial phase, the risk is much greater. And how can you really justify doing that without having the backup, or knowing that you have something like a tool in your toolbox that you can use and pull out when needed?
Of course, yeah, it's there for a mainstream crop. So why should it not be there for an important crop like peanut or any protein crop, or nitrogen fixing crop, I suppose you can nearly say. In terms of then the final, if you were to really look at the final point you'd like to hammer home in the business modeling, is terms of having harvesting equipment, and then further on then processing equipment for maybe the grinding and roasting that you mentioned, Timo, just for simple peanut butter production. I mean, I know we've had discussions beyond this webinar before, and it's not very technical equipment that's needed, but it's just support for growers and for processors to be able to have that. And maybe most, and I'm sure you've seen some of this equipment. I mean, the cost is not massive, but there is still an outlay that's required, and supports for that would be very beneficial, I think, would they?
yeah, definitely. I think most of the equipment that you buy, they're all made far away. If you look at like harvesters, the best harvesters are made in the US, and to get them here, they already cost about like 100,000, like bigger ones. I'm talking about bigger harvesters, but and after that, you need to ship them all the way to Europe. So the infrastructure is not there at this moment, and yeah, we have to now just pass the time with smaller equipment, but that's going to be a big challenge in the future if it's going to expand. But the equipment is not made here because it's not grown here, so that's another issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're at that stage now where it's it's not big enough to be investing in those kind of large scale equipment, but it's too big now to be trying to do it by hand, or other ways. So we're kind of at this tricky middle point where yeah, we're sourcing equipment from kind of different parts of the world, for a few thousand here and a few thousand there, and it's just to make it more efficient, and make it practical for the farmers, and then hopefully sharing that equipment between them as well in some sort of collaboration, so that kind of they're all kind of working together and kind of growing together and getting the benefit out of it and de-risking it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just, I suppose, to finalize there, just in terms of most in the application of peanuts, I mean, there's obviously a very large market for peanut butter from peanuts, but beyond the other applications that you mentioned, do you see that some of the new varieties coming on stream, or some of the varieties that you mentioned there, have potential for the likes of, I'm not sure, peanut milk, peanut oil, and things like that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting, let's say, component in the peanut cake was the protein part. But as you see in the presentation, the amount of protein content was different, but doesn't mean necessarily the higher protein content means the better quality. So that's why what we usually do, we usually extract the protein, we check the functionality and also nutritional profile of that. So depending to the target application, for example, if you want to go for the beverage, we check the solubility of the protein. So if, of course, the higher solubility is the better for beverage application, but uh, sometimes insoluble protein is favorable. So in that case, we can incorporate that one in the bakery product. Yeah, I mean, there's a good potential for that, especially in the peanut cake, but there are some challenges like contamination by aflatoxin, which we need to overcome on that. And also, generally speaking, plant protein has a bit lower functionality compared to animal-based protein. So sometimes we need to use some modification technique to enhance this functionality. So yeah, a lot can be done on that to further improve and explore application for different platforms as a new protein crops in Europe.
Yeah, but I suppose as a food scientist, isn't it great to have another crop available and something else to work with? I
Absolutely.
mean, more ingredients you have to work with, the better. And I suppose one of the main things to pick up from this is there is a willingness to grow peanut in Europe, and we know that crop diversity is such an important thing in terms of being sustainable in terms of disease pressures and any other sort of pressures you might have with drought, things like that coming down the track. So to have peanut as a minor crop, and to keep people like Timo and the people that you work with Beotanics Mark in Portugal, and I'm sure other countries across Europe, growing peanut, there needs to be a bit more action, I suppose, and support from European level to bring it into the mainstream way of thinking. I know in VALPRO Path we're going to put together a very strong business plan to put forward to the European Commission on peanut production based on the work of the last 4 years. In terms of, sorry, just to finalise then, Mark, then where do you see the work in Portugal going, or any of the other countries? And Timo, I'll ask you the same, just your future work in the next year or two, what's your real emphasis going to be on?
We'd love to get more farmers involved. That's kind of the big thing. But to do that, you need a kind of the supply chain built after it. So it's linking up with the processors, with local processors. There is local processors that are making peanut butter, etc. within Europe, and even in Ireland, there's multiple ones around. But that's getting a supply chain going so that farmers can get into there and making those connections. But to do all that, again, you need the proper storage infrastructure, you need the proper equipment infrastructure. You need all that infrastructure and equipment in order to manage like the aflatoxin risk and that kind of stuff that can happen. So, yeah, look, there's multiple things that need to be worked on at the same time. We know that it can grow. We know that it works well for farmers. That the end consumer wants it. It's just putting those structures in place in the middle and kind of building from there. And allowing it all to happen then and allowing it to flow.
And maybe from yourself, Timo, where do you see your future work in peanut going?
Well, first, this year will be an interesting year to see how the products actually sell. I want to work on that, just because only growing them doesn't help you. We also have to sell them at the end, and that's what's going to make money for everyone. And we have to figure out how to bring the message to consumer. So yeah, that's one of the biggest steps to take now in the upcoming years to scale it and make it profitable at the end.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting because I know we've within the project for the other crops, we've heard from similar stories where processors and people trying to market the product are torn between the actual growing of the crop, developing a product, and then the marketing element. So you need to be able to do a lot of different things when you're trying to grow a brand,
Yeah.
especially from a crop that's just straight from the field, from seed, you know.
At this point, it's still doable alone, but in the future, yeah, you need other people for that. But yeah, there has to be a selling point, and at some point you have to sell your product to make it work for in the long term. So
yeah, that's the main thing. I suppose you need returns to keep it going. Okay, so we'll finish up there. I suppose just to thank our speakers, Mark O'Brien again, the Business Development Manager for Beotanics. I'm sure, Mark, if anybody wanted to contact you that might see this webinar after, in terms of your connections, you said, in terms of getting in contact with those processors and other people at farmers that like to grow peanut, they can go through you. They can also visit our website, VALPROPath.com, to get contact details of any of the speakers here. Mohsen, thank you very much for giving us an idea of how you can apply peanuts into a food application. I know you've worked across a number of crops and it's hard to just narrow it down to peanuts and then narrow it down to another crop tomorrow, but thanks very much for that. Interesting to see what we can do. And finally, Timo, yeah, great to see the work that you're doing. It's always encouraging to see people like you starting up and actually bring this thing forward in reality. You need to be brave. And you need to have a lot of determination behind you. So best of luck in the future. And
thank you.
We're glad that maybe the project might have helped you in some way through Beotanics. That's it in terms of our plant protein series for the protein crops. We have 2 or 3 more webinars to finish out. Our project finishes at the end of this year in December, but there will be some more webinars in terms of business model development and so on in the project. With that, I'd just like to finish up and thank FSH for organising this webinar, and thank you all for attending. Have a good day.